I sat at the far end of the dining table, close to the wall, where the light barely reached. "You can sit there," my mother said, already turning away. I nodded and pulled the chair in quietly. Ryan was talking loud, his hands moving everywhere. "They begged me to take the project," he said. Dad laughed. "Of course they did." I tried to speak. "I've been working on something too," I said. No one heard me. Emily leaned toward Mark. "Did you hear what he did at work?" she asked. Mark grinned. "Legend." My plate stayed untouched while their voices filled the room. "Pass the bread," Emily said, not looking at me. I reached, but Ryan grabbed it first. "Careful," he joked, "don't drop it." Everyone laughed. I smiled because that's what I always did. "So," Dad said, raising his glass, "another win for this family." Ryan lifted his drink. "Hard work pays off." I nodded again. "Yeah," I said softly. Mom looked past me. "Eat before it gets cold." I wanted to say something real, something honest, but my throat felt tight, like words had rules tonight. Ryan leaned back. "Remember when he said he'd make something of himself?" he asked, pointing at me with his fork. "What was it?" Emily laughed. "Some big dream." I felt heat rise to my face. "It's not nothing," I said. Ryan shrugged. "Sounds childish." Mark smirked. "Dreams don't pay bills." Dad chuckled. "Be realistic," Emily added, finally looking at me. I laughed too, because silence felt worse. Inside, something folded in on itself, slow and painful, like paper creasing the wrong way. Mom stood up and tapped her glass. "Let's do a toast," she said. "For achievers." She smiled at Ryan, Mark, and Emily. "You three make us proud." Dad nodded. "Sit on the kid's side," he told me casually, like it was nothing. More space there. The chair scraped loudly when I moved. Nobody stopped talking. Ryan raised his glass. "To success." Glasses clinked. I lifted my water. My hand shook. I smiled because if I didn't, I might break. Emily leaned over. "Don't take it so hard," she whispered. "You'll find your thing." I nodded again. "Yeah," I said. Mark checked his phone. "Big night tomorrow," he said. "Awards dinner." Dad beamed. "We'll all be there." I stared at the tablecloth. "I've got something coming up too," I said, louder this time. Mom frowned. "Can it wait?" she asked. "Ryan's talking." I swallowed. "Sure," I said. My voice sounded small, even to me. Ryan went on about praise and promotions. Dad asked questions. Mom laughed at stories she'd heard before. I watched my fork scrape food I couldn't taste. "You're quiet," Mark said. "Nothing to add?" I shrugged. "Guess not." He smiled like he'd won something. "Smart move." Emily nodded. "Less talk, more action." I wanted to scream that I was acting, that I'd been acting for years, quietly, patiently alone. Instead, I folded my napkin, neat and careful. When dinner ended, chairs pushed back. Plates stacked. "Good night," Mom said, already tired of the day. Dad clapped Ryan on the shoulder. "Proud of you." Ryan grinned. Emily hugged Mom. Mark checked his phone again. I stood there, unsure. "I'll head out," I said. No one replied. At the door, I paused. "Good night," I said again. Mom waved without looking. Outside, the air felt heavy. I breathed in and felt something crack inside my chest, quiet but final. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was empty. That table wasn't home. It never was. I closed the door softly behind me, like noise itself could betray how loud my thoughts were. "You okay?" Jason asked on the phone. I said, "Yeah," even though my chest felt tight. He waited. "Dinner again?" he asked. I sighed. "Same table. Same jokes." He didn't laugh. "Tell me." I said. They smiled while cutting me down. He said, "That's worse than yelling." I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. "I keep replaying it," I said. "Every word." Jason replied, "You always do." I laughed once. "I always stay quiet too." He said, "You were never background." I said, "I was. I am." I told him about the toast, the kids' side, the way my dad didn't look at me. Jason went silent, then said, "That's messed up." I said, "It's normal there." He said, "It shouldn't be." I rubbed my face. I keep thinking maybe they're right. Jason snapped, "They're not." I whispered, "What if my work is nothing?" He said, "You've been grinding for years." I said, "Alone." He said, "That doesn't erase it." I heard laughter through the wall. Ryan's voice. Emily's laugh. I said, "They're joking in the living room." Jason asked, "About what?" I said, About me probably. He said, you don't know that. I said, I always know. I walked closer to the door and listened. Ryan said, he'll figure it out someday. Emily replied, or not. More laughter. I closed my eyes. Jason said, say something. I said, why? He paused. Because you matter. I said, not there. Jason asked, did you check your email? I froze. No, I lied. He said, check it. I said, later. He pushed, now. I opened my laptop. My hands shook. There's one message, I said. Jason whispered, open it. I did. My breath caught. They accepted it, I said. Jason shouted, I knew it. I covered my mouth. It's real, I said. Jason laughed. You did it. I sat down hard. I can't tell them. Jason asked, why not? I said, they won't hear it. Jason said, this changes everything. I stared at the screen. It changes me, I said. He replied, same thing. I listened to the house again. Mom said, who wants dessert? Ryan joked, only winners. More laughs. Jason said, they don't deserve that news first. I nodded. I know. He said, so what do you do? I said, nothing. He said, that's new. I said, I'm done explaining. Silence filled the call. Then Jason said, I'm proud of you. My throat burned. Thanks, I said. I closed the laptop and lay back. The ceiling felt too close. I thought about every time I swallowed words to keep peace. I always stayed quiet, I told Jason. He said, you survived. I said, barely. He said, now choose yourself. I asked, is that allowed? He laughed softly. It is now. I heard footsteps outside my room. Mom knocked. You coming? She asked. I said, in a minute. She replied, don't stay up. I said, I won't. She walked away. Jason said, they have no idea. I said, they never do. I sat up and stared at my hands. I kept waiting for permission, I said. Jason asked, for what? I said, to matter. He answered, you don't need it. I thought about the email again. About the risk. The nights I failed. I almost quit, I admitted. Jason said, but you didn't. I said, because quitting felt like agreeing with them. He said, then don't agree. I nodded slowly. I won't. The house grew quiet. Laughter faded. I felt something steady form inside me. Jason said, this is your table now. I smiled. Not yet, I said. He said, soon. I ended the call and turned off the light. In the dark, I whispered, I'm done asking. My heart beat hard but clear. Tomorrow, I wouldn't fight for a seat. I would build my own place, quietly, patiently, without asking anyone to watch. I stopped answering questions. How's work? Mom asked one night. I said, fine. Ryan smirked. Always fine, he said. I didn't react. Jason noticed first. You're disappearing, he said during a call. I replied, I'm focusing. He said, that sounds lonely. I said, it is. Silence followed. I worked late. I woke early. I spoke less. At family dinners, Emily asked, you good? I nodded. Mark joked, quiet guy now. I smiled once, then went still. I wasn't angry. I was done explaining. Jason watched everything. You're changing, he said. I replied, I'm training. He asked, for what? I said, proof. He laughed softly. You always needed that. I answered, not anymore, but I want it. Nights blurred together. Failures stacked. Jason heard every doubt. I messed up again, I said. He replied, then fix it. I asked, what if it's not enough? He said, then make it better. He never judged. He just listened. I met Sarah on a quiet afternoon. Show me your work, she said. I hesitated. It's rough, I warned. She smiled. Everything good starts rough. I showed her. She leaned forward. You did this alone? I said, yes. She nodded slowly. You're disciplined. I shrugged. I had to be. She said, you're better than you think. Her words shook me. She didn't know my family. She didn't know the table. She only saw me. I can help, she said. I swallowed. Why? She replied, because you're worth the effort. At home, nothing changed. Ryan talked about trips. Emily posted pictures. Mark bragged. Mom said, you should socialize more. I said, I'm busy. Dad asked, busy doing what? I replied, working. He nodded, uninterested. I went back to my room. Jason texted, "How'd it go?" I wrote, "Good." He replied, "That's progress." I smiled alone. Sarah sent notes. "Fix this. Try again. You're close." I listened. At the next family event, Ryan raised a glass. "To success," he said. I lifted mine quietly. Emily whispered, "You're so calm lately." I said, "I learned." She asked, "Learned what?" I answered, "Silence." She frowned. Mark laughed. "He's mysterious now." I didn't correct him. Watching felt safer. Listening taught me things. They didn't see me. That helped. Jason said, "You don't react anymore." I replied, "Reactions wasted energy." He said, "You sound stronger." I said, "I feel steadier." Some nights doubt hit hard. What if I fail publicly? I asked Sarah once. She replied, "Then you'll fail honestly." I asked, "And then?" She said, "Then you'll rise." No one had ever said that to me. I worked harder. Mom knocked one evening. "You're distant," she said. I replied, "I'm focused." She asked, "On us?" I said, "On me." She paused. "Don't shut us out." I said gently, "I'm not shutting you out. I'm stepping forward." She didn't understand. That was okay. Jason did. Sarah did. That was enough. I stopped checking for approval. I stopped waiting for praise. I let results speak quietly. Ryan didn't notice. Emily didn't ask. Mark didn't care. I didn't hate them. I just stopped needing them. One night, Jason said, "You've already won." I shook my head. "Not yet." He said, "You're winning quietly." I smiled. That felt right. I walked into the hall alone. "Ticket?" the guard asked. I handed it over. "Enjoy the night," he said. I nodded and stepped inside. Jason texted, "You good?" I typed, "I'm here." He replied, "Breathe." I did. The room buzzed with voices. People laughed, hugged, posed for photos. Nobody knew me. Nobody knew the version of me that once sat at the edge of a table. I liked that. I found my seat and sat still. A man beside me said, "First time?" I said, "Yes." He smiled. "Big night." I said nothing. The lights dimmed. A host stepped up. "Tonight we celebrate history," she said. Applause rolled across the room. My heart started racing. I whispered, "Calm down," to myself. Jason texted again. "No matter what, I'm proud." I stared at the stage. Names were called. Cheers followed. My hands felt cold. I remembered Ryan laughing. Emily saying, "Be realistic." Dad telling me to sit on the kid's side. My jaw tightened. "Next," the host said, "a breakthrough achievement." My chest hurt. The host paused. "This moment matters," she said. My phone buzzed. One missed call. "Linda." I ignored it. Another buzz. "Ryan." I flipped the phone face down. "The recipient," the host said, changed the field quietly. My ears rang. I whispered, "No, not sure why." "Please welcome," she said, reading slowly my name. Time stopped. The room disappeared. I heard nothing, saw nothing. My legs felt weak. The man beside me said, "That's you." I stood up, shaking. Applause crashed over me like a wave. I walked forward. Each step felt unreal. I thought about the dinner table, the jokes, the silence. I thought about sitting small so others felt big. I reached the stage. The host smiled. "Congratulations," she said. I nodded, afraid to speak. She handed me the award. My hands trembled. I turned to the crowd. Faces blurred. I took a breath. "Thank you," I said. My voice held. I looked down at the award. Heavy. Solid. Real. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look. I spoke. "I worked quietly," I said. Not because I wanted silence, but because that's where I learned. Applause swelled. I felt taller. Not louder. Just taller. "This doesn't erase pain," I continued, "but it gives it meaning." I paused. "Thank you for seeing what others didn't." More applause. I stepped back. Back in my seat, my hands finally stopped shaking. Jason texted, "You did it." I replied, "I did." The phone buzzed again. "Linda." "Ryan." Missed calls stacked. I didn't answer. I watched the stage. I felt calm. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for approval. I already had something better. Proof. The man beside me said, "Incredible speech." I smiled. "Thanks." He asked, "Family here?" I said, "No," he nodded. "Sometimes that's easier." I agreed. The event ended. People stood, clapping. I walked out slowly. My phone rang again. I let it stop. Outside, the air felt cool. Real. Jason called. Tell me everything, he said. I laughed softly. They called my name. He shouted. I knew it. I said, I walked alone. He replied, you stood tall. I looked up at the night sky. I did. He asked, you okay? I said, better than okay. He went quiet. That's justice, he said. I nodded. Quiet justice. I looked at my phone. Messages waited. Apologies maybe. Pride maybe. Too late. I typed to Jason. Success didn't fix the past. He replied, but it honored it. I smiled. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked forward, not back. My phone rang again. I let it ring. Then it rang again. I answered on the third try. Hello, I said. Mom's voice came fast. We saw it, she said. I replied, I know. She paused. Why didn't you tell us? I said, you didn't ask. Silence followed. Dad cleared his throat. We should talk, he said. I answered, okay. He added, tonight? I said, fine. I arrived and stood by the door. Emily rushed over and hugged me. I'm so proud, she said, crying. I didn't hug back. Thanks, I said. Ryan grinned. Guess we should have listened, he joked. I looked at him. This isn't funny, I said calmly. His smile faded. Dad avoided my eyes. Sit, Mom said. I did. The same table. Different feeling. Emily wiped her face. I didn't know, she said. I replied, you didn't want to. She flinched. Ryan leaned back. Come on, he said. We teased you, sure, but I raised my hand. Let me finish, I said. He stopped. I took a breath. That dinner changed me, I said. No one interrupted. Not because of jokes, I continued, but because I learned where I stood. Mom whispered, we never meant. I cut in gently. Intent doesn't erase impact. Dad shifted. We were proud of you, he said quietly. I asked, when? He had no answer. Emily cried harder. I was cruel, she said. I nodded. You were. Ryan sighed. I didn't think it mattered, he said. I replied, it did. The room stayed quiet. I felt tired, not angry. I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm here to be honest. Mom looked up. Then say it, she said. I did. I stopped talking because I learned silence was safer, I said. I stopped sharing because being unseen hurt less. Dad finally looked at me. We failed you, he said. I nodded once. Yes. Ryan rubbed his face. I didn't know you felt that small, he said. I answered, you helped make it that way. He swallowed. Emily whispered, I'm sorry. I said, I believe you. Mom reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean in. Can we fix this? She asked. I replied, we can change how we move forward. Dad said, you don't need to prove anything now. I smiled slightly. I never did, I said. Ryan laughed awkwardly. Guess karma's real, he said. I shook my head. This isn't karma, I said. It's distance. He frowned. What does that mean? I said, I grew without you. Emily asked, do you hate us? I answered honestly. No, Mom whispered. Then what? I said, I don't need your approval anymore. Dad nodded slowly. That hurts, he said. I replied, so did being ignored. He accepted that. Ryan said, you're different. I said, I had to be. The table felt smaller. Or maybe I felt bigger. I wasn't shrinking anymore. I'm not cutting you off, I said. I'm setting boundaries. Mom asked, like what? I replied, respect. Listening. No jokes at my expense. Ryan nodded. Fair. Emily sniffed. I can do that. Dad said, so can I. I believed them cautiously. Mom asked, will you come to dinner again? I thought. Sometimes, I said. She nodded. That's enough. I stood up. Emily hugged me again, softer this time. I see you now, she said. I replied, that matters. Ryan offered a hand. I shook it. No more kids' side, he said. I smiled. There never was. At the door, Dad spoke. I'm proud of you, he said. I looked at him. Say it without the moment, I replied. He nodded. I will. Outside, I breathed deep. Jason texted. How'd it go? I typed. They listened. He replied. And you? I wrote. I stayed calm. He sent. That's power. I walked away lighter. Karma wasn't revenge. It was growth. It was becoming someone they couldn't overlook anymore. I didn't need them to fall. I needed to rise. I met Sarah for coffee. She asked, how do you feel now? I said, calm. She smiled. That's growth. I replied, it's distance. She leaned in. Distance can be healthy. I nodded. I forgave them. She asked, did you forget? I shook my head. Never. She said, good. I breathed out slowly. I don't feel angry, I added. She replied, that means you're healing, not surrendering. Jason joined us later. You look lighter, he said. I answered, I set limits. He laughed. About time. Sarah asked, did they respect them? I said, they're learning. Jason added, and you're leading. I looked at both of them. You two stayed, I said. Jason shrugged. That's what friends do. Sarah smiled. That's what belief looks like. Their words settled deep. Mom called that night. We miss you, she said. I replied, I know. She asked, dinner this week? I paused. Not this week, I said. She hesitated. Did I do something wrong? I answered, no. I'm choosing balance. Silence followed. Then she said, okay. That was new. I hung up feeling steady. Ryan texted, you coming by? I replied, another time. He sent, you've changed. I wrote back, I had to. Emily called next. I want to understand, she said. I answered, then listen. She said, I am. I told her, respect means not pushing. She agreed. Dad sent a short message. Proud of you. I replied, thank you. No debate. No tension. That mattered. I sat alone later thinking. Forgiveness didn't erase nights of doubt. It didn't rewrite the table. It softened the weight. Jason called. Any regrets? He asked. I said, no, he asked. Any fear? I replied, less than before. He laughed. That's freedom. I said, it feels earned. He answered, it is. Sarah emailed notes. You're ready for the next step, she wrote. I smiled. She believed without conditions. I wrote back, let's move forward. She replied, proud of you. Simple words. Strong impact. I thought about applause and silence. About who stayed. About who showed up late. Both mattered differently. Mom tried again days later. Can we talk? She asked. I said, yes. She said, I'm learning to listen. I replied, that's enough for now. She breathed out. I'm glad you're happy. I answered honestly. I'm peaceful. She paused. I want that for you. I said, then trust me. She did. Ryan joked less. Emily asked more. Dad watched quietly. I noticed effort. I appreciated it without leaning on it. I didn't rebuild my life around their comfort. I didn't explain my choices. I shared them. That difference mattered. Boundaries felt like air. Jason said one night, you don't flinch anymore. I replied, I remember, but I don't bleed. He nodded. Scars do that. I said, they remind me. He asked, of what? I answered, of who I became. Sarah echoed it later. Scars mean survival, she said. I agreed. I looked at my phone, unread messages resting quietly. I wasn't running from them. I wasn't chasing them. I was standing still. Forgiveness wasn't forgetting. It was choosing peace without pretending pain never happened. I felt release, not happiness. And that was enough. I placed the last plate on the table and stepped back. Too much? Jason asked. I smiled. Not this time. Sarah laughed. You finally cook for people you like. I said, that's the point. Jason looked around. No assigned seats? I replied, everyone belongs. He nodded. I like that rule. The doorbell rang. I opened it. You made it, I said. Sarah hugged me. Wouldn't miss this. Jason raised a bottle. Peace offering. I laughed. Accepted. We sat down together. I took the head of the table without thinking. Jason noticed. Look at you, he said. I shrugged. Feels natural. Sarah said, because it is. We poured drinks. Jason asked, to what? I thought for a second. To quiet wins, I said. They clinked glasses. To quiet wins, they echoed. I felt steady. No nerves. No shrinking. Sarah looked at me. You're different tonight. I asked, good different. She smiled. Grounded. Jason added, tall. I laughed softly. I don't feel loud. Jason said, you don't need to. We ate slowly. Talk flowed easy. No jokes at my expense. No interruptions. When I spoke, they listened. That mattered more than applause ever did. Jason asked, do you miss them? I paused. I remember them, I said. Sarah nodded. That's honest. Jason said, you're not angry. I replied, I'm not small anymore. Silence followed, comfortable. Sarah said, pain shaped you. I corrected, it refined me. She smiled. That's strength. Jason raised his glass again. To refinement. We drank. Midway through dinner, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it. Mom. I set it face down. Sarah noticed. Everything okay? I said, yes. Jason grinned. That's growth. I nodded. I didn't know explanations tonight. This table was enough. The room felt warm. Safe. Mine. Sarah asked, what did you learn most? I thought, that waiting for permission wastes time, I said. Jason added, and silence can be power. I agreed. When chosen. Sarah said, you chose yourself. I breathed out. Finally. Jason leaned back. Funny how history works. I asked, how? He said, it's written by people nobody watched. I smiled. I know. I looked around the table. Jason, who stayed when no one clapped. Sarah, who believed without knowing my past. Empty chairs that didn't haunt me. Just space. Space I earned. I said, thank you for being here. Jason waved it off. Always. Sarah said, you built this. I corrected, we did. They accepted that. Dessert came out. Jason joked, no kids sighed. I laughed. Never existed. Sarah asked, do you forgive them? I answered carefully. I forgive without returning. Jason nodded. Boundaries. I said, peace. The word felt right. Complete. No edge. No bitterness. Later, as plates cleared, Jason asked, what's next? I replied, more work. He smiled. Quietly. I said, always. Sarah added, with confidence. I said, without noise. We sat back, full and calm. The night stretched comfortably. Before they left, Sarah hugged me. I'm proud of you, she said. I answered, that means more than you know. Jason clapped my shoulder. You built your own table. I said, and I fit. He laughed. Perfectly. They walked out, leaving the door open a moment. I closed it gently. I stood alone and looked at the table. Plates, glasses, crumbs. Proof of belonging. I remembered the other table. The laughter that cut. The silence that shrank me. I didn't feel pain now. Just understanding. Pain didn't break me. It shaped the edges so I could stand. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up. A message from Mom. Hope you're well. I typed back, I am. That was enough. I set the phone down and turned off the lights. I sat at the head of the table one last time. History wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. Sometimes, it happened while no one watched. And that was how I made mine.